Three, two, all aboard! Welcome to the All Aboard podcast. I am your host, Brandon DeFreitas, here with you after it's been a long way. I don't even know what to say, but I'm here with Jon Baricelli. John, how are you today?
I'm good, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I know it's been a while. The fans are itching for a pod. So, yeah, glad to hop on and give Jimmy and the others what they want.
I have to say, I mean, we were talking before the pod, getting ready to jump on here, and you were saying you were wearing something special. I felt, a little, self-conscious for a second with my BJ's attire, or I think it's like Berkeley Jensen, whatever they have on that nice little BJ's table for like $5. And I'm rocking the dad uniform here. And then you come in wearing, is that a Peyton Pritchard jersey? Like, what are we
Oh, Brandon,
doing?
come on, Brandon. It's not, is my, the green team look going here. Shout out to Edwin and Tam and my fellow green teamers. I don't even know if you see the last name.
Oh no. Oh no.
In honor of the potential final showdown here, figured I'd bust this one out just for the
Yeah,
pod.
you're gonna have to burn that jersey in the next week. That's unbelievable. There's not really many like local players I disliked having on the team more than Kyrie Irving.
I mean, if instead of fantasy football, you want to talk about like Israel, Palestine, and flat Earth theory, I can give you all the information you need.
This is a political free podcast, John, but I will say we are not subscribed to the flat earth theory here at the All Aboard podcast. So we will not be following Kyrie Irving. But I mean, way to make a splash here on your return to the pod. I appreciate it. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through two rounds of a mock draft. We're going to talk through format, talk about what it means. There's going to be zero inside information being shared because, as you know, I know I've compared you to Varys. I feel like I sort of am the Varys of the league. I've talked to just about everyone. I could probably get the first round pretty close, but we're not going to be doing that. That's not what we're going to be doing. It's not going to be an inside information draft. It's going to be purely what you and I would do at every pick to protect owners. So we will talk about that a little bit more. But before we jump into that part of the program, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your off season. Like,
Oh
holy
yeah,
cow.
sure.
Speaking of the Celtics, trader Danny over here acquiring Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, and the one trade, I don't know what pixie dust you used, but trading Justin Fields away for a first round pick in Bryce Young. How do you even make that happen?
I don't know. That one might have just been a right place, right time situation, but I know in the back of my head I was kind of, I don't know. Clearly I traded Fields, so I had some sort of inkling that, he could have a short leash, whatever. I didn't expect things to kind of go south this fast, but yeah, basically I was starting to shop him a little bit, reached out to Edwin a little bit to test the waters, kind of think we went back and forth a little bit, but no real formal negotiations happened. And then I think it was a work day. I reached out to John I. I'm like, how do you feel about Justin Fields? And he starts listening. And yeah, I think I inquired about Bryce, pique his interest a little bit. I asked for Bryce in the first, essentially. He pushes back a little bit, but this was probably a 30-minute, 1 hour long discussion over a sleeper. And then that was pretty much that.
I don't know what he's doing over there at work anymore because that is just a poor performance. It's funny though. I remember, all jokes aside, when you made the trade, I felt like you were downgrading for this year because this was pre-free agency. It was pre a lot of the rumors that Fields wasn't going to land a job, and I thought you were probably losing out of like a top 12 quarterback for another season. I've never really believed in Fields as a passer, so for fantasy, I was like, as long as he plays, he's going to be awesome. But
Yeah.
it's just a matter of longevity. And I think you felt the same way towards the end. But honestly, no one could have predicted the fact that like going into the offseason to think he wouldn't land with a starting job is crazy. At the same token, though, the one thing I never jived with the trade from John I's perspective was he trades away Mahomes for the sake of Caleb Williams and building up draft picks. And to me, that says we're not playing for 2024. We're hoping for 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
And I never thought Fields was going to last more than a season, maybe two as a starter, the way he had been. And look, that's the way it played out. Chicago didn't want to invest in him, and no other team wanted to invest in him as a long-term starter. So for where John I's team was, I would have preferred Bryce Young straight up. So right off the bat, I know you can confirm. I was like, this is a great trade for you, John. And I don't know what John I was thinking.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely an interesting trade for him. Uh, what was I going to say? And yeah, to I guess I know there's been a little bit of disparaging on the board, both John I for making the trade and myself for but arguably taking advantage. But I do need to get it out there. At the time, I would say I was 100% sure for this coming season, Fields would be the starter somewhere. And then clearly the value tanked pretty quickly when the league basically said, yeah, we view him as a backup. And who knows in Pittsburgh, like I think at some point he's going to be starting games. We'll see how long the leash is for Russ, assuming he's the starter at the beginning of the year. But to your point with John, yeah, he's looked trading Mahomes, taking kind of a longer view than trading for Fields, who, maybe differing viewpoints, but he was with the Bears, 3 years with, you can argue, marginal improvement over that time with, by the end, at least a respectable supporting cast.
Yeah. Look,
But
John,
anyway,
you don't
yeah.
have,
So in terms of, or I guess to go off here a little more, in terms of the first point around, yeah, I'd agree at the time the trade happened. I would agree the thinking was kind of downgrading at QB3. I felt, do I really, again, with the value of Fields at the time, do I need this much kind of resource hung up in a QB3? So I figured I could potentially downgrade. Well, also, so I guess going back to the big picture with the offseason, I had basically reached out to Edwin about Tyreek like day one when kind of the trade window opened up. So those negotiations were kind of ongoing.
yeah.
So I figured if I could get some extra assets in the war chest, try and to grease the wheels a little bit there.
Definitely makes sense. And look, you don't have to explain yourself to the league, make it look good. Your silence on the message board when Justin Fields was getting lit up, just like that speaks volumes, John. You may as well have been screaming from a rooftop. We knew you didn't believe.
Oh, I'm a believer. JF1 is him, Brandon. We're gonna find that out
Yeah.
with Pittsburgh this year.
I mean, I definitely like kudos to you with your offseason acquiring those. I mean, first of all, getting that what you got from Justin Fields, and then it led to a trade for Lamar Jackson. And you did acquire Tyreek Hill on top of that. So sitting there with your team with players like Tyreek, CD Lamb and Drake London could be like the best 1, 2, 3 punch at receiver in the league. So you've definitely positioned yourself. I'm excited to see what you're gonna do as a strong contender this year, and hopefully I can ruin it for you in the playoffs.
I know. I feel like I'm kind of on the U path where I sort of dipped my toes in last year, kind of pushed all the
Mhm.
chips in this year. So we'll see. I know my division with Ben and Jimmy is going to be a bloodbath, so it should be another good season.
Yeah, no, I definitely am glad to be on the other side of we're vacationing in the Bahamas here where I just have to beat Alex and I don't know. I don't even know. I think I'm in with John I, Alex, maybe no John Canellis is in that division and I don't even know Will Tam, my personal kryptonite. So I'm sure I'll drop one or two disappointing games to him as well. I do want to I don't want to spend too much time on the offseason, but there are a couple big moves like high level when you look at what happened this offseason. We had never really had a key quarterback be traded, and Mahomes being traded to John Canellos, and then John feeling like he could trade Lamar Jackson after that. Those are the two biggest assets we've seen go in our dynasty league since the beginning. And I think it's very interesting and exciting from a dynasty perspective that no one's off limits, and also exciting that B, you're gonna see all this movement. From that being said though, my personal take as an owner in the league, if I have one of those top quarterbacks, I don't think I'm trading them. And I don't want to say that on air here, John, have it go out to the league and slow down trades, but I felt like if you were the team trading a Lamar Jackson or trading a Pat Mahomes, I felt like you lost the deal. And it pains me to say it, John. John Canellis, you know I love you. You know I love you. I would have just kept that Lamar Mahomes stack and made a strong push for this season. That's what I would have done in his shoes. But I understand, and I'm not the biggest Jordan Love guy, and maybe that's part of it. I haven't fully bought in, but yeah, just for me, John, if I have one of those top guys, I'm having a tough time trading them.
Yeah, it's so tough because when you're drafting Caleb this year, he's probably the best quarterback prospect we've had come through since the Dino League has started. With all due respect to Stroud, but in terms of just like purely from a rookie draft standpoint, I don't think he was quite as hyped. Like you're hoping these guys turn into these, I mean, no, none of them are going to be Mahomes, but you want them to be that tier of player. And I feel like even when you're drafting them, it's going to realistically take a couple of years before they really kind of fully develop into a reliable fantasy starter. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm with you. I mean, I think it comes down to okay, what's the timeline, and then just how much you believe in, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love. Yeah, I think overall I'm with you. It's tough. Like I know Mahomes had a down year, but you have for real life the best quarterback in the league, and he probably will be for the next, you know, probably almost 10 years or so. So
that's
whether the
how I
fantasy production is top five every year or not, like you can plug him in as a easy quarterback one for the foreseeable future.
yeah, I think it's a bit of an overreaction to what happened last season where he was quarterback 8, he had 294 points in our format. And you look just the year before, he was quarterback 1 with 427. Like these guys who don't run a ton, like they have to get those touchdowns. And Mahomes has shown that. Like just his finishes since 2018, 1-7-4-4, 1-8. Like and the guy's got at least a decade left in the NFL, you have to imagine, at very high play. So I don't know. It's tough for me. I understand last season wasn't the best, but I just think you're locked in at a top 6 guy usually. Last year was a bit of an aberration, and I think he's gonna rebound from there.
Agreed. I know at the time, and I mean, still, no offense to John Ivy, I love the trade for John C there. I think it was pretty ballsy to move the 101, but I love the move, pushing the chips in there, get an
Yeah.
elite quarterback, like you said, and just lock him in going forward.
I just think I would have kept the Lamar and the Pat Mahomes, had an advantage over every team in the league at quarterback, and then just said, "Hey, I'll figure out the other positions. I'll hit
Yep.
on some draft picks, something like that." But that's what I would have done, which leads us into a nice segue to the what would we do mock draft. It's 10-team league, rookies only. Draft picks have been traded. Like you'll see the board in a second. Draft picks in this league have been traded a ton. There's 3 owners who collectively own the first 8 picks. And then, you got Jimmy sitting there at the ninth pick, wedged in the middle there at the end. But mostly it's a Mark, Tam, and John I first round. So we'll go through that. But I did want to lay down the ground rules. John, as the guest, I'm going to give you the first overall pick. So you're going to start it off. We are going to rotate from there. Even if sometimes we're going to have like maybe I'll pick for John I when you picked for him the first pick, that's totally fine. We're just going to rotate first pick, second pick from there on. And then every pick, I want you to do what you would do, and then we could talk through the team scenario from there. But that's what it is. We're gonna just give it like if we're in their shoes, this is what we're doing. Zero inside information. I want to stress that. Like some people are gonna watch and be like, oh, maybe they know, maybe they know. If I know, I'm not telling you. So this is just purely what's based off the two of our boards. You have a draft pick at some point here. I can't even tell on the board where it is, but maybe the fourth round, John.
I do have a single fourth round pick that I've been researching a lot for. So you guys better watch out.
Yeah, well, that's why we're only doing 2 rounds, but maybe John's gonna let a guy slip out of round 2 that he's hoping falls to the fourth. We'll see. John, first pick. John I is on the clock with this one. Where's he going?
I mean, I think kind of all off season before the NFL draft, there have been what feels like a consensus top two picks. So yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams in this or in our league here, John I is both picks. So this is almost a moot point. I mean, we could have the receiver conversation. I know a lot of or at least a handful of scouts view Harrison Odunze and Neighbors kind of in a single tier. I know there were some rumblings. Some scouts or teams prefer Neighbors over Harrison, etc. To me, it's not much of a discussion from at least what I've researched from a talent standpoint. And then in terms of an NFL draft standpoint, I think Harrison landed in like a perfect fantasy situation with a good quarterback and Kyler in place. And really, I would say pretty limited receiving competition with all due respect to Michael Wilson. I know they have Trey McBride, but in terms of receiver, like clearly everything's wide open for Harrison to step right into the receiver one role. Think we can have the John I quarterback discussion at some point. I'd say maybe we should wait for the 105, 106, since I think we know which one he's probably going. Or, sorry, this isn't a predictive. What I would do with the first two picks if I were John I think we know. Like, yeah,
he has
I think the
he
consensus quarterback one is pretty consistent across the league. So I don't think it's a hot take to say Caleb's probably going with one of the first two picks. But for
are we locking it in?
yeah, we can lock it in. Yeah, 101.
So I'm gonna lock up 102 very quick here. This is also John Iannello on the board. We're gonna lock it in with Marvin Harrison. We said it's a what would we do mock, but John has announced on the board what he's doing with the first two picks. So it does make it very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
That said, I agree with you. I think I would take Caleb, who's in a tier of his own at the quarterback position. And then at wide receiver, you take the safest, potentially the best prospect. I don't know. I am a Roma Dunze guy, but he takes one of those top three receivers, which I think is going to be so valuable this year, and just locks that straight into his lineup.
Yep. Totally agreed.
So now we're at three, and three should be Will Tam.
Yep. Yep. Three is Tam. To me, I think the position of this pick is pretty easy.
Yeah.
If I'm Tam, I'm going receiver. He has um, Trevor Lawrence and Anthony Richardson in place at quarterback. I feel pretty good about those two guys as my QB1 and QB2 moving forward. So this feels a little rich to take whether you think either any of the next tier quarterbacks are better than those guys, or if you're taking a quarterback three, this feels a little rich for me. So I think receiver is the clear position for him when he really doesn't have any clear receiver one in place. So then it's really a matter of, again, I would say the top tier is Harrison, Odunze, Neighbors in some order. So which of Odunze or Neighbors do you prefer? It's tough. I mean, this is worth having the discussion, right? I think in terms of talent, everything I've read in terms of my opinions, I have them ranked really close. Year one, I think Neighbors is set up to get heavy volume. So kind of year one, I would expect he's probably the better contributor. I think kind of taking the long view, I like the Odunze landing spot just because he's tied to Caleb, who we think is going to be a good quarterback moving forward. Keenan Allen and the DJ Diet Z retirement home is kind of on his last legs there. So I think, the receiver two or eventually receiver one position, even with the Bears is going to be up for grabs. So yeah, it's really which flavor do you prefer? I'll say for me, I've been back and forth. We're locking in Romo Dunze here. I like the long term.
Oh, let's
I like the
go.
player in terms of style of play. It reminds me a little going back to my first early pick in the rookie draft, Drake London versus Garrett Wilson, kind of early in that 2022 rookie draft.
That's
These two
fair. Yeah.
players and their style of play reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah, I think what convinces me, number one, the quarterback for a Dunze, and you're right, it is a little crowded, but you imagine Keenan Allen, he's on a 1 year deal. I'm not weighing that too much here. But we all know that when it comes to receivers, I move out of the way, roll out the red carpet for Matt Harmon. And Harmon had Roma Dunze. His success rates were even higher than Marvin Harrison. So that piqued my interest right away. It's funny, I didn't actually put together the Caleb Williams versus Daniel Jones thing until you threw it out there. That's another feather in his cap for me. The Giants just feel like they're a long way from like a really productive passing attack. And the one the one sort of knock on Malik Neighbors to me is the fact that he wasn't very good against press coverage and at the collegiate level. And that he wasn't bad. I'm going to say he wasn't bad, but he wasn't to the level of a Marvin Harrison or a Roma Dunze or a more complete route runners following reception perception by Matt Harmon. So that's enough of a knock between the quarterback and the press coverage for me to lean towards a Dunze, even though I know Malik Neighbors is such an electric athlete. Garrett Wilson's a great comp for him. Maybe he's like a Garrett Wilson and he's a better route runner in the pros than he was even in college. So, all that said, I think, Malik Neighbors is still a great selection at 103, but yeah, with the points you raised and like the quarterback situation, I'm such a Roma Dunze guy, and I got a little bit tickled because I thought you were going to go Malik Neighbors.
Oh, love it. Yeah, throwing you a slight curveball early at least. I know you know
Yeah,
how big of a Harmon fan I am myself, so you might have been a little surprised with the direction I went.
I am a little surprised. Now, 104, I already know what I'm going to do, but we're going to talk through this because this is a very big inflection point in the draft. So John Inell has already added Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison. Adunze is off the board, so I think you're either looking at Malik Neighbors or your choice of Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I believe in Drake May as a prospect more than Jaden Daniels, pure NFL. But the rushing upside in fantasy is enough where I would probably go Jaden Daniels over May. So for me, it's between Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. But you're also looking if sort of like a game theory, if you're Mark, he's picking at 104 and 107, and he sandwiches in between two picks for John Iannello, who already picked a quarterback. You have to imagine John Iannello really wants a wide receiver in those spots. You have to imagine it if you're Mark. So as I'm playing this game theory, there's that top three at receiver, and I think there's a sizable break before you get to a Brian Thomas Jr., who's my fourth wide receiver. I'll throw that out there right now. On my board, Brian Thomas Jr. is the next guy. There's a big tier break. Quarterback's so tough. Like, number one, is John gonna go quarterback? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And I said no insider information. That's not insider information because I have no clue. But even if he does go Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and you're there at 107 and your mark, pick up JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy was the 10th pick in the draft. He has very good draft capital. Um, did I have that right? The 10th pick doesn't sound right, but I think that is right. Anyway, someone can
I
spot
think it
check
might have
me
been
after.
11. It might have been 11, but yeah, we're splitting hairs here.
They traded up with the Jets. It was the 10th. They did trade up with the
Oh,
Jets.
okay.
Anyway,
Shame on.
top 10 draft capital. Justin Jefferson's there. I don't know. Quarterback's such a finicky game. Like, I'm gonna throw the gamble if I'm Mark personally, and I would pick a Malik Neighbors because he can't get that later. And the teardrop from like a Jaden Daniels, Drake May to a JJ McCarthy and a super flex for a team. I feel like Mark is sort of playing for the future. I don't think Mark's a strong playoff team this season. So I would just take whoever falls and just add to my receiver core and get a stud right now. So, what do you think of this inflection point, John?
Yeah, no, I think that's basically right. High level. Are you going Malik Neighbors? Are you going, your quarterback too? Whichever one's your favorite. I'd agree with you for fantasy. I think you can argue Daniels has the highest upside with the rushing that we expect he's going to have. Um, I tend to agree. Like I have no picks for the first three rounds here, so I've done more limited prep than usual. But I think I at least have a feel for the first round and what I would do. I'm with you. I think there's a top three, you know, the top tier of receivers. I think it's these first three guys. You can argue Harrison's kind of in his own tier, a half step above these other two. But again, you're kind of splitting hairs. If it were me, I think I'm in agreement with you. I would lean Neighbors, kind of force John I's hand, see what he does with the other quarterbacks. And then if I'm Mark, yeah, I have Justin Herbert, feel good about him as quarterback one. I don't know. I feel like the NFL barely knows how to scout and draft quarterbacks, let alone
Yeah.
us. So I'm happy letting a quarterback fall to me at 107 if I'm Mark.
That's how I feel as well. And he does need a quarterback too. I mean, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Gardner Minshew. But again, to the point, like, is he really trying? Like, maybe in his world he thinks he is, but to me, like, if a neutral party would look at this and be like, this isn't the year we're going for the championship. We're in a rebuild. So I would wait and take who's left over. This is interesting because we're both gonna have a shot here as John Iannello. Notice how none of us have mentioned Travers. Technically Travers' team, but we know who's calling the shots there.
Yep.
Um, so John's sitting here. He has Caleb, Marvin Harrison. You look at his team. I mean, his quarterbacks are Daniel Jones, Stidham, Fields. That's it. So like he definitely has room to pick two quarterbacks. But you're on the clock, John. So let's take me through what you're thinking here.
Yeah, no, I was going to say. So I think this is where we have the John I quarterback discussion. So each, yeah, trades away Mahomes, trades away Bryce Young. His as of May 29th, 2024. So ahead of the 2024 rookie draft, his starting quarterbacks, like you said, are Daniel Jones. This year could be it. I think there's a pretty short leash there. I think he finishes the season, but after this year, who knows? Stidham, probably not the starter, maybe gets a couple games ahead of Knicks. Fields, yeah, like I said, I think he sees the field this year, gets some starts. We'll see what he can do with it. At this point, I don't know. We kind of saw it with Chicago. It feels like he's a mistake-prone quarterback. So as of now, I would say he has zero quarterbacks on the roster you feel good about beyond 2024. So if I'm him, with all the draft picks I have, I'm trying to build out the quarterback room this year. We think, strong quarterback class. I have a ton of picks to play around with. I want to fill out that quarterback room quickly here. So yeah, 101. I'm drafting Caleb. I think he's going to be a locked-in quarterback one for me going forward. And I don't want to kind of point you in any sort of direction here, but I'm going to lump these two picks together a little bit here. If I'm him, I'm going quarterback here. I want three of these top tier, or three of these quarterbacks. Caleb, I would put it in his own tier, and then two of this next tier with May, Daniels, and JJ McCarthy. Um, in terms of who I would take, it's tough, like you said, in terms of pure fantasy upside. I do agree. I think Jaden Daniels has the upside with the rushing. I'm a little worried about him as a prospect. I kind of question the long-term outlook, which again, for fantasy, if I'm John I, though, I think the window is, I'm not competing really this year. I don't think. Maybe starting next year, I'm a playoff team at least. I'm going to go Drake May here. He's my second favorite quarterback prospect,
Oh,
so I'm going to lock him in.
wow. I like the selection, and I kind of it's interesting because rushing's so important in fantasy, but when you're playing dynasty, there's also an element of longevity. So which prospect do you like better? We're not going to get into it here, but thank God for the Commanders. They took Emmanuel Forbes
Yeah,
and Jaden Daniels and left Drake May and Christian Gonzalez there for the Patriots. Thank
let's
you. I
go.
don't I don't know. It's two different regimes, but you keep gifting us who we want. So that's totally fine. Um, I'm feeling the same way. And to be honest, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. I have a clear top six. I rate my draft board sort of like tiered in the draft, and I try to do it not so much on like I have an early first tier, and I have six players this year. That's the most I've had since we launched. This is our third draft. So this is a strong draft at the top. And to me, it's the three quarterbacks and the three receivers. I'm always taking talent. I'm figuring it out later. It helps that now he has Caleb, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Daniel Jones. That's looking like a pretty solid quarterback room already. Compared to before we started the draft, like you said, he has nothing. So I am going to take the quarterback, and then we're going to leave Mark on the board. John, we do have 10 minutes left on this particular meeting, which is totally fine. We're going to run it down. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. We'll pause and we'll do part two. But I just want to throw that out there. And we'll probably
Sure.
do the second round a little bit faster. But
Yeah.
Mark on the board now. I'm guessing it's just JJ. I mean, you're on the, I don't want to steal
Yeah,
your
yeah. So
thunder,
yeah, we
but
don't need to spend too much time here. To me, this is an easy pick. You know, not totally similar to John because Mark has Justin Herbert and on his team, but yet beyond that, nothing. I'm taking JJ McCarthy. To me, in terms of talent, I think there's kind of a tier break after those three and JJ McCarthy, but clearly top 10 draft capital in the league goes to the Vikings, who are a pretty good landing spot with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson in place, a coach who seems to have a good offensive scheme. So I'm feeling comfortable with him, especially as a QB2 versus someone that I'm trying to slot in as a QB1.
I agree. He's got a little bit of rushing upside, top 10 picks. So and you look at the Mark decision here, he's probably looking at either Malik Neighbors and JJ McCarthy, or he's looking at, say he goes Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas Jr., or Jaden Daniels and JJ McCarthy. So if I'm Mark, I feel better about getting an elite number one receiver, the type of player he doesn't currently have on his roster.
Agreed. Yeah, I think if you look at his team, it's kind of like Tam, where he has, a good number of interesting receivers. Maybe we can touch upon this in the second round a little bit too. But yeah, Rashee Rice, Mr. Water and Pizza,
Water and pizza.
uh, who else? Yeah, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. So I mean, some interesting guys from his class last year. Are any going to be like true elite receiver ones? It's early
I
in their
don't think
careers,
so.
but I'm not positive. Yeah, I wouldn't feel super comfortable about any of them elevating. So I would rather lock in a guy like Neighbors, who I am pretty confident can be a good receiver one in the coming, starting hopefully in the coming years at least, and then moving forward. Lock that guy in, take a JJ McCarthy, who I can slot in a QB2 and go from there.
Yeah, that's where I am too. That's what we did here. I'm very interested on draft day because I think reasonable minds can disagree. And he could do just about anything. He could go Jaden Daniels at 4, and then the whole thing changes. But this is what I said on the board for a while that I would do, and I'm sticking to it. And feels like you're the same on the same wavelength. So
I'm
I'll jump
curious
in
to see
here.
what you're thinking at 108 here. I feel like this is kind of another inflection point where, yeah, based on the picks so far, Tam locks in Rome Odunze, hopefully,
So
alpha receiver one for him moving forward. So I feel like at this point he could go in a number of directions.
So I had 6 players in my early first tier. I have another 5 players in my mid first tier. So I have 11 players rated as mid first. So I think it's a very deep start of the draft. I then have 3 in the late first. So I have 14 guys with first round grades. And I know you guys are sitting there. I could see John I at home being like, I don't give a rat's ass what DeFreitas has on his board and what he's grading people. He doesn't know anything. And that's totally fine. But regardless of how we stack it, I think it is a deeper class, and I'd feel great about having anything through about the 204 for me personally. So we're kind of starting, or I guess we're in the middle of a mid first tier, but all these guys are very similar. And I already mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. is my next wide receiver on the board. You look at Tam's roster, even adding a Roma Dunze, like he just doesn't have very many receivers I feel great about. So this is him right here. Portland Sutton was like what, wide receiver 30 something last year with 10 touchdowns. I think AT Perry's interesting. Trey Tucker's nothing. Osborne's nothing. Bateman, we keep hoping. Shakir, like, is he ever going to be a volume guy? No. Mechie stinks. Jameson Williams, I'll hold my tongue. I don't want to hurt any feelings, but I'll hold my tongue. Parker Washington, a Mike Harmon favorite, but like, is he ever going to be high volume? You get the point. Jordan Addison, lump him in with the Jameson Williams discussion. I'm not going to disparage Addison on this podcast. My point being, he needs receivers. He needs them bad. So if I were him, I'd be just going pure on the receiver train. Quarterback, he's got Lawrence and Anthony Richardson, and he's got Russ as a QB3. That's fine. That's a good quarterback room. I'll figure out QB3 later. Let me use this chance to build the receiver room. Extra bonus that Brian Thomas would be a stack with Trevor Lawrence. The other guy I'd be deciding between is Brock Bowers. And if
Yeah, I
Brock
was going to say,
Bowers,
can we bring up the Bowers in the room before you lock up the pick? Yeah, what do you think for Tam here? Because I know he has Hawkinson, who Yeah, it seems like you're leaning receiver, which I would probably agree with as well. I know Hawkinson has the injury he's coming back from, but I know a lot of, I don't know. I
It's
think I,
tough.
yeah,
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Tight end in fantasy, you have to be a difference maker. Otherwise, like I traded away Jake Ferguson. Okay, he'll probably be like tight end 7, tight end 8. It just doesn't matter that much in a 10-team league with one tight end. Like, so you need Brock Bowers to be a difference maker to be worth the 108. If he went to the LA Rams, I would have a full Sean McVay in my pants, and I would be smat. I mean, I might have had the Brock Bowers conversation earlier if he got picked by the Rams. The problem is he went to Las Vegas with the Raiders. I'm not really even worried about Michael Mayer, but the quarterback situation is bad. I'm not sure I really trust the play caller. So, I mean, it's really tough. I would still buy the talent if I'm him, if I'm someone here at 8, 9, or 10. But with Brian Thomas on the board, I don't really have to worry about that. So I think as a tiebreaker, I'm going to go positionally, grab the guy who could be wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. And I'm going to throw this out there because no insider information, but Dietz has been messaging me. Oh, I heard he has like a torn labrum or blah blah his shoulder. Like irrelevant for a wide receiver, completely irrelevant. You can get uh, maybe my medical degrees just showing there. I feel like these receivers have injections for AC joint sprains all the time. I have no idea if you could do that for a torn labrum. I really don't care. He'll play through a shoulder injury and get surgery in the offseason. Totally fine. I'm not worried about it. Brian Thomas is my pick here if I'm Will Tam. And I think, John, I want your quick thoughts, and then we're going to have to pause and go over to part 2.
sounds good. Yeah, no, not to keep patting each other on the back, but I agree. This is what I would do. I mean, I think it's like we're going pretty consensus here, so it's not super like 108. Yeah, you could go a different bunch of different directions, Bowers potentially, but I'm with you, Tam. He has some, like you said, interesting receivers. I would say pretty low upside. Like you said, I don't think we need to have the JMO discussion here. I think we land on the same side of things. But yeah, I would say no real receiver ones in place. You got Odunze you feel good about. I like Brian Thomas a lot, super athletic. Christian Kirk is there to kind of eat targets for now, but Brian Thomas fills a different role, more of a we think traditional X type, downfield vertical threat, can hopefully develop the route tree. Someone going into a position with a good quarterback in place with Trevor Lawrence. So I like this pick a lot. If you're Tam, take the dart throws on these upside receivers here and try and build out that room, since young, kind of talented receivers are obviously very valuable and hard to come by. So I think with the extra picks, which I know you have opinions on as well with Tam, I don't know if you want to save that discussion for later, but given the
Well,
picks he has, I like Thomas here.
yeah, I agree. And we'll definitely cover that in the second round. Um, that is going to do it for part 1. We appreciate you guys watching. John, I'm going to end here. I'll call you on the other end. We'll let the video process. But for everyone listening, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you in part 2.